All right, greetings. What's going on, everyone? This is Chris Dixon, and I am back with another video and discussion. Hope you all are doing good and well today. In this particular video and discussion, I will be building with you all on pendulums. All right, just want to teach on this excellent divination tool known as the pendulum. All right, and I also want to share with you all some tips and things to take into consideration before you begin to work with the pendulum. All right. So if you're new to divination and you have finally decided to want to work with the pendulum, all right, this is a good video for you. All right. And it's also good for those that have been utilizing the pendulum for a minute now, and you're automatically familiar, with the things that you need to do before you work with the pendulum. All right. And even going on into, actually working with one. All right. So this is a good video for you all as well. It can serve as, a memory refresher, if you want to say that. Let's get right into it. So pendulums, they can be traced back to various ancient cultures and civilizations, whether it be ancient Egypt, Samaria, Babylonia, Greece, Rome, various ancient cultures and civilizations utilize the pendulum, for different things. But one of the most common things was for divination. All right. And this form of divination is known as dowsing. All right. So the ancient diviners, they would utilize pendulums to give them yes, no, maybe, answers from the divine. All right. So this is what a pendulum would look like. Okay. This is my pendulum right here that I'm utilizing, at the moment. This is a jasper stone, and as you can see, it's connected to a silver chain. All right. So a pendulum is a physical object, as you just saw, being a gemstone. But it can be a gemstone, it can be a small wooden square, it can be a small metal ball, but it's a small physical object that is connected to, a string, cord, or a chain, right? And what it does is that it swings in a certain way, up, down, or vertical. It swings horizontal and diagonal. All right. And when it comes down to divination, based on how it swings, that will be the answer you get, when you ask your questions, right? So if it swings up and down, that's a yes. If it swings left to right, that's a no. If it swings diagonal, that's referring to a maybe, okay? Or a rephrase your question, no comment, or goodbye, right? So if you look at a pendulum board, which I personally use myself, I made my own. That's my template, that I have on my board, along with, the alphabets and, numbers, etc. But that's the template. So yes, no, maybe, rephrase, no comments, and then, deuces. That's what I got on mine for goodbye, right? So when I'm utilizing my board along with my pendulum, it'll swing in a certain direction, based on the question, I ask. So based on the answer I get, that's the direction that it will swing in. But it swings in that direction, as it is giving you the response, based on the question you ask, or questions, right? So that's how pendulums, operate. They swing in a certain direction. They're also connected to, time. So with clocks, right, you will see different clocks that have pendulums, connected to them, and they swing left to right. You've seen these type of clocks. They're also used in hypnotherapy, right? So you have therapists who are licensed hypnotists. They'll utilize dowsing on their patients to assist their patients with, bringing things to the surface, from their subconscious mind, so that they can address the circumstances or, the previous experiences, from their past, so that they can heal from them, right? So the pendulum will be used to put them in a trance state, so that can happen, right? It's not, a practice where they're trying to, control and manipulate a person. You know what I'm saying? They're doing it, to help them open up the subconscious so that they can revisit previous experiences that they haven't healed from, right? So it's used in hypnotherapy, right? And it's also used in energy healing, okay? So practitioners, shamans, shamanists, they will use the pendulum, okay? And they will hold it over, a client's, aura, okay? So if they want to see if a person's root chakra is open, closed, or blocked, they'll hold their pendulum over the root chakra of their client. And based on how it spins, because pendulums do spin in circles as well, whether it's counterclockwise or clockwise, right? So if it spins counterclockwise, clockwise, or up and down, that will let them know that their client's, chakra is either open, closed, or blocked. So that'll let them know, what type of work needs to be done, okay, for healing, right? So pendulums also pick up on energy as well. So these are very powerful tools, okay, for divination, energy healing, and things of that nature, okay. So things that you should, take into consideration before you work with the pendulum, all right? You want to visit a metaphysical shop or a crystal shop, okay? Those are the best places to go to purchase a pendulum. And of course, you can get on Amazon, order from Amazon. But actual crystal shops or metaphysical shops are good places to visit, okay, for purchasing a pendulum, right? And when you go to an actual shop, all right, when you're doing your pendulum, shopping, you will find that you will feel drawn to a certain pendulum, okay, over the others, all right? And the reason for that is, pendulums are spiritual, tools. So in other words, they do have a consciousness to them, all right? And they will communicate to your spirit, all right? That's why you feel a certain pull towards a certain pendulum, is because that particular pendulum is wanting to work with you, all right, for your spiritual work and divination, all right? So that's why you feel that pull, is because it's communicating to your spirit that it wants to work with you, all right? Of course, even when you're making one yourself, personally, you're infusing it with your own consciousness, anyway, all right? So they do have a consciousness, all right? They're just not some, mundane physical item. They do have a spiritual consciousness to them, okay? So when you purchase your pendulum, okay, very important that when you get home, you want to consecrate it, okay, as well as charge it, all right? You never want to utilize any divination tool, okay, without first consecrating it and charging it. All right. And of course, I want to put this out there too. I don't recommend using divination tools of any sort that is used. Okay, always get your tools brand new. Okay, just wanted to put that out there too as well. Very important. All right. But you want to cleanse, consecrate, and charge your pendulum. So when you get home, you want to rinse off your pendulum with water. Okay. Based on the type of, like if you purchase a pendulum that's a gemstone, and long as that particular gemstone is salt friendly, okay, you can let it soak in sea salt, all right, in a bowl of water, all right. Or you can utilize sage, smudging your pendulum, but you want to make sure that you cleanse your pendulum real well, okay. Whether it's letting it sit in a bowl of sea salt, okay, because some crystals, they can't be in salt because they'll dissolve, okay. But long as it's a gemstone that is salt friendly, okay, you can utilize salt, all right. And even if you purchase a pendulum that is made from metal, okay, you can still sit it in a bowl of water for cleansing, okay, or you can use sage, all right. But you want to make sure that you cleanse your pendulum very well, okay. The next thing you want to do is you want to consecrate your pendulum, and what that means is pretty much ask your higher self, your spirit guides, just your overall spirit team, whatever deity or spirit that you work in consort with regularly, all right, you can ask them to consecrate your pendulum. So pretty much you hold it in your hand, and pretty much you ask your higher self, spirit team, okay, that you will consecrate my pendulum, all right, and to always ensure that it will give me accurate, responses. And please keep away any type of negative or imposter spirit from intercepting my pendulum during divination that will give me the wrong response or an inaccurate answer. All right. So that's pretty much consecrating your pendulum. All right. So you are connecting your pendulum with your higher self and your spirit team to ensure that the pendulum will give you accurate responses. Because, if you skip these particular prerequisites, pendulums, can be intercepted by imposter spirits, and you will get an inaccurate response, okay. But as long as you consecrate it, you don't have to worry about that. And when it comes down to charging, you can let it sit under the moon, okay. The moon can charge your pendulum. You can let it sit under the moon for a few days, or if you want to let it sit longer, up to a week, you can do that as well. Or you can let the sun, charge it as well, okay. The sun can do it. But utilizing the moon and the sun, can charge your pendulum, all right. You can also use candles. You can hold your pendulum over a candle, and that can also cleanse, your pendulum as well. As long as you're doing these things, your pendulum will, give you, the accurate responses that you're seeking, okay. And of course, when you're channeling spirits and they're revealing answers to you via the pendulum, is also connected, to your spirit team as well. So long as you take the proper prerequisites, okay, you won't have to really worry about any of those type of problems, all right. But I do want to put this out there too. It is possible for pendulums, over the course of time to stop resonating with you, okay? Even though you've consecrated them and things like that. So like if you've been utilizing a pendulum for a good minute, over time you may start to not feel connected to it, anymore. You may find that it may be, not giving you the responses you're seeking, or you just not, it's not resonating no more. That's because pendulums can, stop resonating, and you have to dispose of that one and purchase a new one and begin the process. So, everybody's different. There are some practitioners, who have utilized the same pendulum for years, and they have, remained connected to it, for many, many years. But then there's some practitioners, okay, who have disposed of pendulums after a certain amount of time and have purchased new ones, right? So everybody's different, everybody's journey is different. So that's pretty much where you utilize your intuition and just how you feel. You know how you feel, you know how you relate to your pendulum, right? And of course, I speak from my experiences. I've utilized pendulums for, a while, and then over the course of time, I don't really feel connected to it anymore, and my spirit team will, have me get a new one. They'll say, hey, it's time to get a new one, right? So it can happen, but that's where you use your intuition and discernment, your feelings, just, go with how you feel, right? Just study yourself, right? Study how you feel. So that can happen. I just wanted to put that out there too. But as long as you're taking the prerequisites, when you purchase your pendulum, cleanse, consecrate, and charge, you're good to go, okay? And that's pretty much all that I have for this particular discussion. Hope that you all enjoyed it. Pendulums are very, beneficial, to your spiritual development on this path of magic, right? And some things too that I want to point out, that you also need to consider is that when you're doing divination, it's like any other form of magic, please take it serious. Please, take it serious. Don't ask, any silly questions. You know what I'm saying? Always seek to ask, logical and, mature, questions, when you're consorting with spirits during divination. Okay, because spirits are not anything to play with, okay? They're not going to waste their time, working with you, in divination, and you're asking, crazy questions. You know what I'm saying? Ask questions, that's concerning things that you need to work on within yourself. You know what I'm saying? That's what gets their attention, when you're doing things of that, when you're asking questions, pertaining to things like that, they can reveal, certain things about relationships, things that you experience that you're gonna need to pay attention to on down the line. They will answer questions like that, but they're really focused on what you need to be doing in the present moment. You know what I'm saying? So as long as you're asking questions in that particular category, things in the present moment, things you need to work on within yourself, what you can do to improve, the magic and things of that nature. That's what gets their attention. So I just want to put that out there too, as you work with spirits and divination, okay? Especially when you're utilizing, the pendulum, asking yes, no, maybe questions, along with, a board, a pendulum board in this case. Okay. So just as long as you're going about it, in a mature way, and you're serious about this path and this journey, that will help you. All right. That's pretty much all that I have for this particular discussion. I hope that you all enjoyed it. If you did, like the video, subscribe to the channel, continue to listen to the podcast on Spotify and other major podcast platforms, the Tunnel Vision Podcast. Okay. Of course, it's here on YouTube as well. If YouTube is, primarily your only, source and way to listen. Okay. I also have it on here as well. Okay. If you have any interest in any of my services, I do offer consultations, spiritual consultations, spiritual readings such as shadow work readings, oracle readings, and I also offer, deity readings as well, to assist you with finding out who and what type of spirits, you're connected with, and they walk with you on this path. So I can assist you with that as well. If you have any questions about anything pertaining to the occult, religion, spirituality that you want me to talk about, feel free to email me. All right. All of that is in my description box of my YouTube page as well as my Spotify page. All right. That's all that I have for this particular discussion. Keep up the good work and everything you do. And I will talk to you all on the next video and discussion. Peace.